really appreciate the opportunity to do this. I am having this conversation a lot with people, and I'm really glad to be having this conversation. Partly to just to normalize what we're all going through, to help us understand what we're all collectively going through in our own ways, and then to try to help people figure out, so how do we keep running what I refer to now as an ultra marathon that we have all been thrown into without any training, preparation, or choice. And you know, how do we keep going in the midst of all of this, and care for the various people that are in our orbits to care for. So today I'm going to talk more about something called national shock trauma, and what that is, and sort of how we as individuals and as a body, as a collective, respond to that, and some of the brain processes and that happen in the midst of that. Tomorrow I want to focus a little bit more specifically on the trauma-informed care piece, and how do you talk with people? How do you pray with people? How, you know, all of those kinds of very practical things, and also then move into our own self-care and compassion fatigue and burnout and trauma and all of this. So that's sort of the general layout for the next couple of days. And I'll present for about 15-20 minutes. We'll go into breakout rooms for some discussion on the material, and then Beth will direct us as to when and how we're coming back. So that's sort of my approach for the days. So let's talk about this thing called national shock trauma. We experience trauma individually as well as collectively, okay? And what we're going through right now are multiple national traumas, okay? Trauma is, the basic definition of trauma is actual or perceived threat of harm or death to either ourselves or others, along with feeling powerless to do anything about it or to do much about it, okay? So that perceived or actual threat, as well as the powerlessness to do much about it. We've all been through national trauma before. We've had 9/11, we've had Sandy Hook and Columbine and Orlando and all the shootings. We've been through Katrina, the fires in California, different natural disasters. And we certainly respond to those things with shock, with grief, disbelief, all the emotions that might go with something like that. And what's different about those kind of events and what we're experiencing now, and those are national traumas, no question about it. They're very serious national traumas. But what's different about those and what we're experiencing now is that most of us have several degrees of separation from those events. You know, we weren't in the towers, we weren't a first responder, we weren't in the areas where any of the shootings were, okay? We have degrees of separation from those. We may know people who were involved. We may know people who know people who know people. We have heard stories about those things. Most of us have degrees of insulation from that. So we can experience the shock of it, and we can experience the upset or the horror of all of those things, but our systems, our bodies, minds, and spirits can calm down a lot faster because we're not directly involved in it. What's different about COVID is that there is not a single person in this country who is not somehow directly affected by this. All of us have had impacts to our life. There is no way we can escape it, okay? For some of us, that's been direct experience with either having the illness ourselves, knowing people who have had the illness and recovered, knowing people who've had the illness and died, trying to minister in those situations. Certainly the upheavals of, are we doing school online? Are we doing it virtually? Do I go to work? Do I go to the office? How do I minister to my congregation? Everything is upheaved. Even going to the grocery store, you know, everything now is a decision that is informed by COVID and keeping ourselves safe. And the other reality of this is there's a legit existential threat to every one of us, okay? And as we learn about this, we're learning how to mitigate it a little bit better. But COVID doesn't allow us a B, C, D. Here's what we do yet, because it's new. When people go through, when there's like natural disasters, like Katrina or even any of the shootings, the trauma specialists know that there are phases and stages that people move through as they learn to deal with those traumas, okay? We don't have those same mechanisms in place right now because COVID is a new virus. And everything that we know about it, there's also a confounding factor, something that's opposite in the way COVID acts or presents. So it doesn't give us sort of this sort of a normal pathway to move through trauma, okay? What's also different about this is, again, when you have Katrina or some other big event, generally the helpers are not the people going through the trauma with you. There might be some short term where, immediate first responders, but what's different about COVID is that the helpers, like you, are also living and experiencing this new national trauma at the same time. So we're having to figure out what's going on with us and how do we cope with it, as well as how do we help the people that we're supposed to care for. And the other thing that is different about this, and again, we're learning, is we don't have sort of a specific timeline that we can say we're going to move through this. We can't quite offer people yet. Hopefully we'll get there as we learn more about it. But we don't have that specific timeline and a way to assure people, like I would with someone who's been in a domestic violence situation or trauma, that here's the treatment plan. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how we'll move through this trauma and heal together. We're still figuring all of that out. So that makes this different. The other thing that is really important to be aware of is that because we're all going through this and it's ongoing, and it's going to be ongoing for a long time, our brains are exhausted, okay? Zoom exhaustion is a real thing, okay? Before all of this, if we had to do a Zoom meeting or whatever, we knew that it was, okay, this is a business meeting, or this is it had a purpose to it. We knew ahead of time that it was for convenience sake, and that it was for geographical differences or whatever. And we accepted that because that's what it was. Now with everything on Zoom or whatever platform people are using, our brains are also having to add the layer of, I know I'm not in person with this person. We're trying to make it seem like we're in person. We're doing dinners or all of that, but I know we're not in person, but I'm trying to be and I'm trying to do the technology, and I'm trying to do all of this. I'm trying to have a relationship while I'm also grieving at the same time that I can't hug my grandchild, or I can't actually click the glass of wine. We have all this going on in our brains, and we're on Zoom all the time. Okay, so that's one of the reasons our brains are exhausted. Another reason that we are exhausted it is that when we experience trauma, okay, we have the fight, flight, freeze, or appease response. Say a tiger bursted into each of your rooms right now, you would go into fight or flight mode. You would figure out, okay, am I going to pull that bookshelf down and try and knock the tiger? Am I going to try and get out my window? What am I going to do? And you would subdue the tiger somehow, and your system would be all activated, and get the tiger subdued, you're safe, and then you talk about it with people. You maybe not sleep real well that night because you'd still be pretty activated, but your system would eventually slow down. You'd be able to process because there was a beginning, a middle, and an end to it. With what's happening right now, there is no beginning, middle, and end to the trauma that we're experiencing. It's ongoing. And when we experience trauma, our stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, all those stress hormones are going. They're meant to go to address the situation that we're in and then slowly dissipate out of our body. With all the stress that we're under right now, it's physically impossible for our bodies to do that. So we are in fight, flight, freeze, or appease mode almost constantly. And so when we do that, our eating gets off, our digestive system gets off, we can't flush those toxins out of our body fast enough, our systems are on overload. We can't think, we start to have that brain fog. We start to get irritable and cranky, maybe find ourselves depressed or more anxious. What I want to just make sure you understand is that these are normal physiological responses to an abnormal situation. Right? Sometimes people are thinking, well, I shouldn't feel the way I'm feeling. What is wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with you. These are normal responses to an abnormal situation. Okay, make sense so far? And I'll give you some ideas for how you can mitigate some of these on a daily basis. Okay. Trauma happens to us body, mind, and spirit. Too often, we think that we can get through trauma by talking about it, by simply talking about it. Talking about it has its place, okay? And providing safe spaces to listen is important. The piece that we miss is that trauma also is stored in our bodies. When we have either an emotional assault, a physical assault, a threat to our survival, that is stored in our bodies. And what's happening now, especially with people who are caregivers, who have to take care of others, who are also trying to maybe take care of children while you're working at home, juggle all the things that we're juggling, is we are storing a lot of this. Okay, I think we're good. So we are storing a lot of this stuff in ourselves physically. When all of this is stored in ourselves physically, as well as all the people that we are around, remember the cortisol and the adrenaline and all this stuff that's constantly coursing through us, okay, everybody is going to be more on edge. We can't help it. It's a physiological process. Our emotions are neurobiological processes. We can't help but feel what we're feeling. Now, of course, what we do with that matters. But we need to understand that our emotions are neurobiological processes. They were designed for our survival. Okay? They were designed to tell us, oh, this is good, we like this is pleasant, or no, this isn't safe and we need to do something about it. And of course, there's the whole continuum in between. But when we experience something, we can't help but have a physical reaction to it. And as caregivers, we're oftentimes so busy right now caring for other people, trying to figure out how to help, trying to figure out, well, how do I do this by Zoom? How do I maybe do this drive-by? How do I do this safely? Oop, am I really 6 feet away? I got a bat. We're constantly on hyper alert. We have to stuff that stuff inside of us, as do the people we're caring for. And when we stuff that stuff, we naturally are going to get tired. We're going to be more emotional. We're not going to sleep as well. And when all of us are feeling that way, that just sort of breeds for this constant escalation of tension. The saying is that anxiety is the most contagious emotion there is, which is something that, maybe when you're talking with whoever it is that you minister to, just kind of normalize that anxiety is the most contagious emotion that there is. We've all had the experience of being in a room together, and somebody walks in and the room just lights up. Their personality and you just kind of want to be there and everything. We've also had the experience of somebody walks in and the entire room just goes, ugh. Okay. Anxiety is like that. It can just suck the life out of a room. Out of any group of people. So we have to realize and be aware of how contagious anxiety is. And I found myself about a month ago saying, gosh, if this was just COVID, this would be easy. Just to manage one national trauma at a time. But we have long ago entered the phase where now we are in complex, multiple national traumas. We're not designed, our bodies are not designed for long-term, consistent, multiple complex traumas like this. Okay, so this is heavy stuff that we're dealing with. One of the ways I'm starting to talk about it and understand it now that we're at this point in this is, if you're thrown into the water, hopefully you know how to tread water long enough. Like you're in a lake or something like that until somebody can rescue you. And treading water seems like a pretty mundane kind of skill. I'm just kind of moving my arms back and forth and I'm kicking my legs and I'm just kind of hanging out here. But treading water keeps you from drowning and being overwhelmed. More and more in my work and in the people that I talk with in my community, more and more I'm hearing people talk about, I'm just barely surviving the day, and feeling bad that that's all that they're doing is surviving the day. when right now treading water and surviving the day so that you don't go under is a pretty significant thing to be doing. So I think that's something that if you can help normalize for whoever it is, that just maintaining every day is a good and holy and strength-based thing that helps take a lot of pressure off people, and hopefully yourselves too. Part of what makes this, getting through this particular trauma, difficult, and I'm going to try to do this without being political, but it's just a reality of it too. Getting through any kind of trauma requires non-anxious leadership and presence. Okay, you've all dealt with that in your congregations or your workplaces, and you know how hard that is. Okay, we don't have that right now. Even if we don't know the exact path out of it, like I'm sure you've been in situations where something's happened and it's like, I don't know what to do here. I'm just going to kind of keep things calm, but I'm going to go get some help. I'm going to get some resources from someone else who can help me figure out how to get, or at least say, we don't know what to do, but we're going to figure it out and we're going to keep you informed. That helps people get through trauma. We don't have that right now. So part of my role, part of your role in all of this is, again, how do we help people manage the anxiety of not knowing how we're going to do this, which puts you in the position of trying to be non-anxious leaders in the middle of your own anxiety and in all of this. Let's see. How are we doing on time, Beth?
It is 11:20. So.
Okay. Let me shift a little bit into, I want to talk about some very immediate things that you can do to help mitigate your own physiological response to what's going on, and things that are easily teachable to the people you work with. Okay, because I think that's an important part of people being able to listen, people being able to pray together, people being able to be vulnerable together. When our systems are physiologically so activated, it's really hard to calm enough to enter a prayer space or a place to talk. So we have to help people calm their systems down. Okay, so ways to do that are water. Water. I cannot emphasize enough drinking water. Okay, at least half of whatever your body weight is in ounces every day, because it goes back to that cortisol and adrenaline, those stress hormones that are going through our body. Under normal circumstances, even normal stress, we'd experience that tiger bursting into the room. We'd, a couple hours later, a day later, be sitting down with friends or whatever, eating, drinking. We'd be drinking water, and that would slowly process out of our bodies. Right now, with the constant assault of stress, our bodies can't keep up with getting those stress hormones out of our body, and water is the way to help filter that out. So make sure that you are, when you talk with whoever it is that you're talking to or ministering to, ask them about water and about flushing all of this out. Okay. We've all heard about breathing, but specifically a way to breathe that you can integrate into your day, or even do as a group, make it part of prayer, is to take that deep breath, certainly, but then to exhale to the point where you can feel, when you're blowing that air out, exhale to the point where you can feel the muscles in your belly contracting and you have absolutely no air left in you. What that does is that activates your it accesses your central nervous system and starts to release just a capsule, another few pieces, if you will, capsules of that stored emotional trauma, that stored emotional stress that we keep stuffing in ourselves. So if you're willing, just try it with me once right now. Is take a deep breath, as deep as you can. And there's no timeline to the rest of it. Blow out very slowly and gently until your belly muscles contract as far as they can, and you have absolutely nothing left in you. As I'm watching people, what I can see is facial muscles start to soften, shoulders start to go down. For some people, there were eyes that were starting to droop, just really, just a little bit. Okay, I wanted you to do that so you can have just a direct experience of it. So when you talk with other people about it, you know what you're talking about. But that's a very easy thing to incorporate into your day, even into worship before you start. Help everybody just calm their system down a little bit. Certainly connecting with others as you can safely. Humor is another thing that really helps us activate our central nervous system and calm our systems down. But it's not the, oh, haha, Beth told a joke and it's kind of cute, but or maybe we're kind of laughing politely. I'm talking about the kind of humor and laughter that really, that full body, belly, everything fall on the floor laughter kind of thing. So in the midst of a pandemic and everything else that's going on, that might be a little hard to do, but encourage people, do this yourself, watch funny movies, get away from social media, listen to humorous podcasts, try out a style of comedy that you never liked before, engage your mind different and see if you can get yourself. I have one of these little things that I got when my mom was in the hospital. Watch those baby laughing videos on YouTube. You can't help but laugh. Okay, that thing goes longer than I realized. You can't help but laugh when you listen to those baby laughing videos on YouTube. We need that, and that, just like that breathing, that activates, it accesses and calms our central nervous system down. So figure out a way to integrate humor into what you do. The other thing, and again, you possibly incorporate this into worship, or if you are meeting with people, is encourage some form of creativity. Creativity accesses the depths of our being, body, mind, and spirit, and takes that creativity, takes the stress, takes all that is in us and externalizes it. That could be as simple as doodling. It could be as complicated as woodwork, as yarn. It could be those mandala coloring books. I see a sister knitter on the page there, okay? Whatever it is. The other thing is that it's a physical thing, a jigsaw puzzle, anything like that. It gets it out of your system through your body. We forget sometimes that we are incarnate people, okay? Jesus felt things, body, mind, and spirit. We don't talk about that a lot. Sometimes I think when he went away to pray, There's part of me that thinks he felt like smashing his head into a wall sometimes because the disciples were so obtuse, or, screaming at the heavens. Like, we see Jesus, this nice, calm, handling everything. I imagine in him more getting into the boat, like, I'm getting the heck out of here. And then they come and they go, he goes, oh man, Jesus had a body, mind, and spirit like we do. He sometimes had to get away. He had to do things for self-care. We do too. But we have to be more ruthless about it, more rigid about it than we ever were before. So we can, especially even if it's just feeling like we're treading water, we got to keep at least treading water. Does this all make sense to people? Okay, I want to make sure I'm honoring time here, and I'll put the questions in the breakout room or in the chat here. We're going to move into the breakout rooms, and what I'd like to talk about is, and I'm going to type while I chat here, is what is one new thing you learned about trauma or the national situation or national shock trauma that you can take with you, and practically use to either explain or help people understand or just for your own self. The second question would be, if you had to explain this to someone, how would you explain it in your own words? Because I can do all the teaching and stuff about trauma and all the rest of it that I want, but if you're not able to translate this in your own words, your own language to people, then what I've done hasn't been helpful. So I want you to have a little practice in how would you simply explain, or even just normalize what people are going through. Let's just do those two questions. That's plenty for whatever time we're going to have, Beth.